Those of you sketching today, you're simultaneously watching. I've made 4 mugs today, and I've done that using both options. So we've got the pinch option and we've got the slab option. Now my slabs I left out over lunch and they're already getting kind of leather hard. So I think it's time for me to wrap those. Notice that I have not slipped and scored. I think it's wise to do that tomorrow. Take the soda can out to see that the clay is holding its shape, and then cut these maybe a little more evenly on both sides so that they go together more naturally. And then this one here is a little softer. I did that during session B. Actually, I could probably leave the soda can off of the first one I made a few hours ago. Now these are getting pretty big. If we're looking at this pinch pot mug that I made, notice how the bottom has kind of an angle to it. I ended up removing clay off the bottom later down the line, so this would be a good thing to do on Monday or Tuesday. Just taking a tool to remove material. If you have this tool, it would be helpful, but we want to wait until it's a little bit more firm to do that. Then I have one that's a little bit smaller, but it's tricky to get in there if you put your clay into that cylinder shape and to pinch right here. So I've been using a paddle to try to thin that out. And then if I double my efforts and put my fingers inside, so 4 fingers all the way down the bottom, and then a thumb on the outside, that way I have something that I can hit against. I can thin that area out even more, also keeping the flat bottom. That will help me shape it too. So I might as well do that all the way around so my mug isn't taller on the one side as it starts to harden up. And then I need to thin this out. I'm doing the pinky check. It's a bit thinner than my pinky there, but on this side, it is about the thickness of my pinky. So I need to keep pinching a little bit more all the way around to get those walls nice and even. Also ensuring my cup isn't super heavy. So I'm gonna get these things out of the way, and I'm gonna put plastic over and cut some more clay. All right, so the first thing that I'm gonna do is show the slab people how I want you to cut the clay. So if you're cutting clay fresh out of the hunk in your bag, it would be easier, instead of wedging it, and I've just got a little bit of clay here. I'm pulling down the bag enough where you can just take a slice off the clay that's about 1 inch thick. So for the 5 of you doing this method, taking a nice slice, a little bit thicker on the one side, and about 1 inch thick here. And then you're just gonna roll it out from there. So slab people, don't need to wedge. We're gonna wedge with compression from the rolling pin. Now, people doing the pinch method, we do need to wedge, and we want to do that to get rid of our air bubbles. So I'm going to take about this much clay. I look at the width on my wrist here, thinking about a large orange or a small grapefruit for the pinch method. Now, those of you doing the slab method, I recommend just waiting patiently, putting this slab aside before we roll it thinner, and wrapping your can with newspaper. So I take the newspaper and I fold it in half. And then from there, I take my can and I I roll that newspaper on there tightly and a little piece of tape to secure it. And it's okay if the newspaper is sticking slightly over the top of the can, and I'll put that aside. All right, so those of you that are creating the pinch, which is the majority of you, we are gonna wedge our clay. And just a reminder, let's first hit it into a cube. I'm thinking my hands are a little crusted with dry clay, so I want to get that off there when I'm trying to wedge. Wipe my hands here so they're clean. And the cube doesn't have to be perfect as long as you've got somewhat of a cube shape. And then I'm going to use my finger to blur out the ripples and divots. Okay, so one side of the cube is facing up towards the sky. And I'm going to take my hands using the fat part of my palm, and I'm going to hold the clay and push down and forward. And I kind of got like these little indentations here. And then I'm going to rotate it back towards myself, looking for that edge again. And I'm going to go right above, push down and forward. So now I've got two little indentations, rotating it back towards myself and down and forward. And I'm going to do that 10 times. Trying to create a spiral. That was 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now I'm going to hit it back into a cube again, and it's getting a little bit dry. So I can spray. If you have a spray bottle, you can do a couple little squirts of mist. If you don't, you can just take your sponge and pass the clay with a little bit of water. Just a little bit, if it's dry. And 10 more. Looking for that spiral starting to form. All right, so that's 20 times wedging. And based on what I just saw in that video, which has been working well for me today, pinch pop people, I want you to get the clay into a cylinder. I'm gonna whack it with this thing, this little spatula. You can get one of these at dollar store, Ross, grocery outlet. Maybe you have one in the kitchen. I'm trying to make that as even as possible as far as the way the clay is distributed in that shape. All right, so I'm gonna leave that here and let my pinch pop people get there. All right, so the people that have the slab method, go ahead and wipe your hands briefly and let me know. Just type cut and soda can if you have both of those ready to go, so I can know if you're ready for the next step. So if you've cut the clay, write cut in the chat. And if you've wrapped the soda can in newspaper so it won't stick, write can in the chat. Cut and can for my slab people. And if you're just watching today, you can let me know that. Let's see. It looks like Dulce, Saul, Elena. And there was one more, I think. Are you guys ready for the next steps? Thank you, Dulce. Cut and can. She's ready. Okay, good. Thank you.
Miss I?
Yeah, Mariana, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Maria.
Oh.
I'm with Mariana here at the school. She brought her stuff, and we're working on in your room.
Okay, no worries. So, which method is she doing? The pinch, right?
The pinch. She uploaded her picture right before, like when it was class. I was like, Mariana, upload it. So she got it done.
Okay, good. So if you go underneath, I believe sink two cabinets to the left, there are some tools in those colorful containers that will be helpful, like a smoothing rib and sponge and water bowl and all that. So let me know. And if you can't find them, give me a shout out. But it's one of those cabinets to the left of the middle sink in that main room.
Okay, in the middle. Okay.
Okay, so just let me know. All right, Melissa, I see your comment too. So I'm going to go on. So check it out, slab people. The first thing I'm going to do is flatten the slab with a lot of force, just using my hand. So you can check it out and then apply. They say a lot of ceramic artists get carpal tunnel, and I know why. Carpal tunnel is right here when your carpals don't function properly, and it's hard to feel after long periods of time working with your hands. Hopefully that doesn't happen to me, but we definitely use a lot of pressure. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the camera back just slightly, is I'm going to stretch the clay like pizza dough before I even use the roller. So I'm going to grab it from one side, and I'm going to have 4 fingers on top and both thumbs on the bottom. And I'm going to elongate the clay by hitting it against the surface. So mostly I'm stretching this part. So here we go. And I'm kind of moving my whole setup here, but I knew that might happen. Let me tighten up that camera. A lot of force. Okay. All right, try that again. And I'm stretching the clay, and then I'm flipping it over, and I'm doing the same thing with the other side. So it grew about 1.5 inches. I'm going to do it a couple more times. And then I'm going to flip it over. And doubling my efforts by adding some pressure with my hands there. Okay, rolling pin time. So I'm going to take my rolling pin, and I'm going to start in the middle. And I'm not going to use guides. I'm going to just do it organically. Let me get this so it's a little bit more focused in one direction. Now that I've stopped slapping the clay. Okay. So if I start in the middle, I can kind of make a dent. And this rolling pin is my great grandma's, so it needs a little WD-40. It's kind of loud. Heads up. All right, now I've made a dent. And I'm going to start pushing that clay with force all the way down to the one end. I'm going to flip it the other direction so it's easier for me to have leverage, and I'm going to push it towards the other direction. Now you're gonna get some waves, so you're gonna alternate the direction in which you roll. Okay, and now I'm going to slap it on the surface a couple more times. Stretched it pretty long here. I don't want to go too thin, but I also don't want it to be too thick when I cut my rectangle out of it. So I'll roll it a little bit more, starting in the middle and pushing the clay towards the outside. All right, so it's time to see if there's any air bubbles. And those will be revealed when you're rolling and also when you're smoothing with your rib. So I'm gonna get my rib here. And I'm gonna hold it at an angle. And I'm gonna drag it from top to bottom to smooth the clay surface. And then I'm gonna flip it over and do the other side. And surprisingly, I didn't see any air bubbles, but you'll be able to see them. They're like little blisters. And if you do see them, see a couple, I'm gonna hold my head at an angle. Just pop them with the needle, or a pen would work too. And then smooth over that. All right, so for those of you that are doing the slab, I'm gonna let you get that slab where it needs to be. And I'm gonna go back to my pinch pot, people. Also, let me hold it at an angle so you can see the thinness of it. It's about 1/3 of an inch. So if I measure that with my ruler here, it's about right there, about the width of my pinky. Okay, pinch pot, people. We've got our little can shape cylinder. I'm just gonna move over a little bit. And we blended out any imperfections. And we flatten one side so we know we have a nice smooth bottom. Now I'm gonna sink the belly button just as I did before, and I'm gonna go down a little bit deeper than I did on my first project. Now, keeping my hand when I do the pinch method straight up and down and trying not to pull the form outward is pretty crucial. So I'm gonna do this pretty slow. Rotating as I go and kind of shaping it from the inside out. And every once in a while, I'm going to give it a tap on the table to make sure that my walls and lip are even in thickness. Now it gets tricky as you get towards the bottom, especially if you can't reach. This is where the clay wants to hang out. So I'm gonna put my hand on the outside and I'm gonna start pushing out on the bottom with all 4 fingers, getting my hand all the way down the bottom and making sure I'm not creating too much of a belly, right? Sticking out belly. I'm just using this hand to support and push against when my fingers are working inside. Now I'm giving you 4 days to thin this out because if I look at these forms, I'm thinking they're really thin. But if we do the process too quick of thinning them out, the pot will collapse. So looking at these two, I've got some thinning to do, but I don't want to rush the process. So just going off feeling, which is very sensory. It's nice. If somebody asked me what I did today, I'm grateful to say that I wasn't on the computer all day. Maybe the computer was on in front of me, but I made 6 mugs in 5 hours, at least form them. And that feels more productive than punching in numbers into the grade book, for me anyway. Okay, so I'm seeing some slight cracking here. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a damp sponge on the lip. And I'm going to set that aside and check on my slab people. Those of you rolling a slab at Rosario and Dulce, I don't know if Saul you're rolling it out or you're just watching. I know Melissa's watching. Are those of you rolling the slab ready for the next steps? Let me know if you've got your slab rolled or if you need a little more time. So Dulce, Rosario, and Saul, let me know when you're ready with your soda can and your slab rolled out. Okay, take your time. And Rosario and Dulce, check in with me when your hands are clean. All right, so people pinching, everybody stop, or if you're sketching, I want you to pause for a minute. Right here, it's hard for me to get down there. And I started pushing out, but I need to double my efforts here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is put those 4 fingers back inside and my thumb outside. And I'm gonna take this part of my opposite hand and I'm gonna line those 2 up. And I'm gonna start really giving it some pressure. And I gotta be careful doing this because I don't want the form to get too wide open. So maybe laying it down and turning as you go. And I'm getting rid of this huge thickness. I can see it just going away as I'm hitting it with that fat part of my hand right there and using the inside fingers to ground it. I just got rid of a lot of weight there. Now I'm going to take the paddle, still supporting inside, so I have that extra support. And I'm really whacking this thing to thin out that thick spot. All right, now I kind of lost my bottom, but at least I got rid of those thick walls on the bottom. So I'm going to tap this on the surface and find that bottom again. Make sure it's even here. Okay. And then I'm going to cup it to try to make sure it's stable and use the paddle again to shape it a bit more. And then keep pinching. Oh, Rosario, you're doing the pinching. Okay. So I think it's Dulce, Melissa, and Saul that are doing the slab. So when you guys are ready, Saul and Dulce, as you're working to see the next steps, have me cut the rectangle before wrapping it around the soda can. Just let me know. All right, so Saul, I'm gonna have you take a pause rolling, and I'm gonna have you just watch for a minute. I'm gonna put my pinch pot aside, and I want those of you pinching to continue pinching. Those of you sketching, get those ideas down, glancing over every once in a while. All right, so if you have a ruler, great. If you don't, what I recommend is using a straight edge of any kind. A student earlier was like, I have a magazine. That would be fine. So I could even use a magazine as a straight edge. But the goal is to have something that is vertical that I can use as a guide that's also at least 12 inches long. So I'm going to use my ruler. And I'm going to do this first. I'm going to take my soda can. I'm going to take this one. It's a little better. I'm going to find the middle of my slab, and I'm going to make a mark on each side. And then from there, you can use a pen. You could use the needle tool. I'll use a pen just in case you don't have the needle. And I'm going to find the other side of that mark. Now I've got a lot of extra slab on either side, which I'm going to wedge up. If you have this tool, this knife, you could cut a little side slit. If you don't have that knife, you could use a steak knife. Be very careful. And I'm going to line that ruler back up, but this time on the inside. I'm going to hold the knife and slowly cut. Now, normally in the classroom, I give you guys paper templates to trace that I've already pre-measured. No soda can, we use PVC pipes. But we're just winging it here, doing the best we can. All right, so I'm gonna take that little slit that I made in the corner and remove all the clay scraps. And I'm going to mash those up and wedge them here shortly. And then I'm going to take my soda can, and I'm looking at this. Pretty even thickness. Let me do the pinky check. Yeah, I'm stoked. If you did need to thin it out a bit more, you could roll it more with the rolling pin and then measure again, just in case you had inconsistent areas. But if you're happy with the thickness, you're going to grab the edge of it and slowly roll it like a burrito around your soda can and gently handle it and stand it up. And then if you have extra material, you're going to hold this piece and you're going to kind of pull it up towards the sky because it's going to want to wobble and slowly cut down. And then I'm going to just leave that for tomorrow to slip and score. So I have a little extra material, but I'm not going to slip and score with the soda can on there. I'm finding that it's probably going to be easier to do that tomorrow after the clay's taken its shape. Pull the soda can out. and cut those. Now, one other thing I want to show you, I have an X-Acto knife. I know a lot of people may not have an X-Acto knife, but if you do, and you're doing the slab method, I highly recommend using an X-Acto knife. I got too many tools is my problem over here. Here it is. All right, so I'm going to cut these so they line up perfectly. If I'm going this way at a diagonal with this side, and I would wait till tomorrow for those of you doing this the first time, I would cut. I'm looking at that, so then I need to cut this one. Same direction. Be careful. And now tomorrow, those are going to go together pretty good when the time comes, but I'm not ready to do that. So I'm going to put my soda can back in there. And that's a wrap for those of you doing the slab method. I'm going to put that on my board with the others. And so maybe just leaving it out for about 20 minutes while you're cleaning up all these scraps. I'm going to wedge right now. Dip in the water. And come back to it. All right, I'm looking at the time. We got about 20 more minutes. So those of you sketching, try to finish up to the best of your ability with an idea in place. And if not, get that done before the end of the day so that you can get started on your form. Time flies. And if I know teenagers, nobody wants to do homework or clay over the weekend. Maybe you do. Maybe you're passionate about it like me, but use the class time that you have to be present.